What would you do if the moment you chose to save a stranger's dying baby became the decision that destroyed your entire life and then gave you everything you never knew you needed? Claire Anderson lost her infant daughter 9 months ago. Her husband, sleeping with her best friend, who's now pregnant with his child. Her career, shattered by grief. On a red-eye flight to LA, broken, she hears a baby's desperate cry, a cry she recognizes as something terribly wrong. What she does next is unthinkable, forbidden. Some call it insane. But that single act of courage connects her to a man with deadly secrets, a billionaire with mob ties who's running from people who want him dead. Within weeks, she's caught between the FBI, organized crime families, and a love so intense it might cost her everything. 3 kidnappings, one impossible choice, a chase that ends with bullets flying and a baby's life hanging in the balance. This is the true story of how helping someone when you're drowning can either destroy you completely or save you both. If you wanted to know what happened when the point came for Claire and the baby she'd saved, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me, would you have helped that stranger's baby? Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story has more twists than you can imagine. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's begin. Claire Anderson sat in the seat 24B, cramped between a snoring businessman and a college kid with headphones blasting music she could hear from 3 feet away. The divorce papers in her lap felt heavier than they should have. Just paper, just ink, just the legal end of 8 years of marriage that had died long before the lawyers got involved. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Jessica, her former best friend. Former, because best friends don't sleep with your husband. Former, because the woman who'd been her maid of honor was now 5 months pregnant with Ryan's baby. The text read, Ryan and I felt the baby kick today. He's going to be such an amazing father. Followed by a heart emoji and a baby emoji that made Claire's stomach turn. She deleted it without responding. She'd stopped responding 3 months ago, right after she'd walked into her own bedroom and found them together. Right after her entire life had imploded in the space of 30 seconds. Claire closed her eyes and tried to ignore the physical pain radiating through her chest. Not heartbreak. She was past that. This was actual physical pain. Her breasts ached with a familiar pressure that medication couldn't stop and grief couldn't end. 9 months. It had been 9 months since she'd held her daughter Lily. 9 months since the baby monitor had been silent when she'd walked into the nursery that terrible morning. 9 months since the doctors had said those words that still echoed in her head. Sudden infant death syndrome. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. And her body still hadn't gotten the message. She'd pumped before going through airport security 4 hours ago, but already she could feel the milk letting down, soaking through the nursing pads she still wore. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around her chest, hunching forward to hide the wet spots spreading across her shirt. The humiliation of it never got easier. A 34-year-old woman, lactating for a baby who'd never nurse again. The medication was supposed to stop it, but stress made it worse. And God knew she had enough stress for 10 people right now. The Manhattan courthouse had been brutal today. Ryan's lawyer, expensive, ruthless, everything Ryan's corporate law firm salary could buy, had painted her as unstable, unfit, a woman who couldn't let go of her dead daughter, who'd refused to move on in a healthy way. The judge had ruled in Ryan's favor on almost everything. He got the house. She got 60 days to clear out her belongings. He got to keep most of their savings. She got barely enough to cover first and last month's rent on whatever apartment she could find. And now she was flying back to Los Angeles, to her temporary home on her friend Pat's couch, to rebuild a life that felt impossible to rebuild. Claire opened her eyes and stared at the seat back in front of her. Somewhere in this plane was the life she used to have. The career she'd loved as a pediatric ICU nurse. The marriage she'd thought was solid. The future she'd planned. All of it gone. A baby's cry cut through her thoughts. At first, she tried to ignore it. Babies cried on planes all the time. It wasn't her job to help every crying child in the world. It wasn't her responsibility. But the cry continued and continued, getting louder, more desperate. Claire knew that sound. She'd worked in pediatric intensive care for 6 years before Lily died, before she'd taken leave and never been able to go back. She knew the difference between a fussy cry and a distressed cry. This was distress. The businessman beside her groaned. "Someone needs to shut that kid up," he muttered. Claire looked toward first class, 3 rows ahead. She couldn't see the baby, but she could hear him. And as she listened, the cry changed. It weakened, became thready, desperate in a way that made every nurse instinct she had scream alarm. That wasn't a healthy cry. That was a baby in trouble. Her milk let down violently in response to the sound, a biological response she couldn't control. She felt it soak through the nursing pads, through her bra, spreading across her shirt in dark, mortifying patches. She grabbed her cardigan and wrapped it around herself, but it was too late. The college kid next to her had noticed. He gave her a disgusted look and turned away, pressing himself against the window. Claire's face burned with humiliation. This was her life now. Leaking breast milk on a plane, divorced and homeless, while her ex-husband started a perfect new family with her former best friend. But the baby kept crying, and that sound, God, that sound was wrong. It was getting weaker. That wasn't good. That meant the baby was giving up. Claire unbuckled her seatbelt. "Ma'am, the seatbelt sign is on," a flight attendant said, appearing beside her. "I'm a nurse," Claire heard herself say. "That baby in first class is in distress. I need to check on him." The flight attendant looked uncertain. "Ma'am, I'm not sure. Please," Claire's voice cracked. "I'm a pediatric ICU nurse. That's not a normal cry. That child needs help." Something in her tone must have convinced the woman because she nodded. "Follow me." Claire walked up the aisle, acutely aware of every passenger who turned to stare. She knew what they saw, a woman with milk stains spreading across her chest, disheveled and desperate. She looked insane. She probably was insane, but that baby needed help. She reached row 2 in first class and stopped. The man holding the crying infant was the most dangerous-looking person Claire had ever seen. Mid to late 30s, black hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Dark, cold, the kind of eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. He looked up at her, and for a second, she thought he might tell her to go away. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His hands held the baby with careful precision, but there was something desperate in the way he rocked him. "Sir," Claire said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm a nurse. May I examine your son?" The man's eyes flicked to the flight attendant, then back to Claire. He seemed to be weighing whether she was a threat or an answer to a prayer. Finally, he nodded. Claire took the baby from his arms, and her nurse training kicked in immediately. The infant was maybe 3 months old, severely underweight. His lips were dry and cracked. His eyes were sunken. His cry had gone weak and thready. "When did he last eat?" she asked, cradling the baby carefully. "He won't take the bottle." The man's voice was rough, controlled, but barely. 3 days now, maybe 2 ounces total." 3 days? Claire's head snapped up. "This baby is severely dehydrated. He needs IV fluids immediately. We need to land." "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," the intercom crackled. "We're about 90 minutes out from LAX. We've got some weather ahead, so I'm going to ask everyone to please remain in your seats with your seatbelts fastened." 90 minutes. The baby might not have 90 minutes. The infant, in her arms, let out another weak cry and turned his face toward her chest. She felt him rooting instinctively, searching. He could smell it. The milk. Even through her cardigan and shirt, he could smell it. Claire looked at the dangerous man in front of her, at the dying baby in her arms, at the flight attendant hovering nearby. This was insane. This was professional suicide. This violated every protocol she'd ever learned. But the baby was dying. "There's one thing I can do," she heard herself say, "but it's unconventional." The man leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Anything, whatever it takes." Claire took a shaky breath. "I lost my daughter 9 months ago. My body still produces milk. She couldn't finish the sentence. It was too crazy. But the man understood immediately. She saw it in his eyes, shock, followed by desperate hope. "You would do that?" he asked quietly. "For a stranger's child?" "He's dying," Claire said simply. "I'm a nurse. I took an oath. A passenger in row one turned around. Are you seriously suggesting you breastfeed someone else's baby? On a plane? That's disgusting. Another voice chimed in. That can't be sanitary. That can't be legal. Claire ignored them, her eyes locked on the man in front of her. It's your choice, sir, but we're 90 minutes from landing and your son is in severe distress. I can help him, or we can wait and hope he makes it to the hospital. The man looked at his son, at this tiny baby going limp in Claire's arms. When he looked back up at her, his eyes were wet. Please, he said, his voice breaking on the word. Please save my son. Claire nodded to the flight attendant. I need privacy, the bathroom. Right this way, ma'am. As Claire followed the flight attendant to the first-class bathroom, she heard the whispers following her. She heard the judgment, the disgust, the shock. She knew what this would look like to everyone watching. She didn't care. Inside the bathroom, she locked the door and sat down on the closed toilet seat. The space was tiny, barely room to breathe, but it would have to do. Her hands shook as she adjusted her cardigan and lifted her shirt. This was the first time since Lily that she'd done this for an actual baby. Every time before had been pumping into bottles that she'd pour down the sink, crying as she did it. I'm sorry, baby girl, she whispered to the memory of her daughter. I'm so sorry. The infant, she didn't even know his name, latched on immediately. The desperation in his suckling made tears stream down Claire's face. He was so hungry, so hungry. She held him carefully, supporting his head the way she'd supported Lily's, the way she'd supported hundreds of babies in the NICU before grief had driven her away from the career she'd loved. The baby's cries stopped. His breathing evened out. Color started to return to his cheeks. Claire leaned her head back against the wall and cried silently. This was the most insane thing she'd ever done. This would probably cost her what was left of her nursing career. This would give Ryan's lawyers even more ammunition to paint her as unstable. But for the first time in 9 months, she felt like she'd done something right, like she'd saved someone. Outside the bathroom, she could hear the passengers talking. Some voices were supportive. Most were shocked or disgusted. She heard the dangerous man's voice cut through them all, cold and commanding. Anyone who has a problem with someone saving my son's life can take it up with me directly. The voices stopped. 20 minutes later, Claire emerged from the bathroom with the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. His color was good. His breathing was even. He looked like a different child than the one she'd taken in there. She handed him back to his father, and their hands touched for a brief moment. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. Thank you, the man said, his voice rough with emotion. You saved his life. I don't even know your name. Claire, she managed. Claire Anderson. Dominic Garrett. He looked down at his son, then back at her. I owe you everything. The flight attendant appeared at Claire's elbow. Ma'am, I have to file a report when we land. What you did was irregular. Claire nodded, exhaustion crashing over her. I understand. It was worth it. As she walked back to her seat in economy, past the staring passengers and whispered judgments, Claire realized she'd just done something that would change her life forever. She just didn't know how much. Not yet. The baggage claim at LAX was a chaos of travelers and rolling suitcases and families reuniting. Claire stood by the carousel, watching for her single battered bag, trying not to think about the disaster she just created for herself. Her phone had 17 missed calls. 10 were from her lawyer, 4 were from unknown numbers, 3 were from Pat. She called Pat first. Oh, thank God, her friend answered immediately. I'm at arrivals. Where are you? Baggage claim. Pat, I did something really stupid on the plane. How stupid we talking? Like forgot to turn off your phone stupid or join the Mile High Club stupid? Worse. Claire grabbed her bag as it came around. I'll tell you in the car. Pat was waiting in the pickup lane in her ancient Honda, hazards flashing. She was 42, a surgical nurse with gray-streaked hair and the kind face of someone who'd seen too much suffering to judge anyone else. Claire climbed into the passenger seat and immediately burst into tears. Honey, what happened? Pat pulled into traffic, one hand reaching over to squeeze Claire's. Through her tears, Claire told her everything. The crying baby, the diagnosis, the impossible decision, the bathroom, the passengers' reactions. When she finished, Pat was quiet for a long moment. "You saved a baby's life," she finally said. "I violated about 15 different medical protocols. Ryan's lawyer is going to have a field day with this." "Screw Ryan's lawyer. You're a nurse, Claire. You saved a life. That's what we do." Claire leaned her head against the window. "I looked insane, Pat. I was leaking milk through my shirt, and I offered to breastfeed a stranger's baby on an airplane. You were a medical professional providing emergency care to a dying infant. That's how you frame it if anyone asks." "The nursing board is going to ask a lot." Pat sighed. "We'll deal with that when it comes. For now, you need sleep and food." "When did you last eat?" Claire couldn't remember. Pat's apartment was small but comfortable, a one-bedroom in Culver City that she turned into a sanctuary. Claire had been sleeping on the couch for 2 weeks now, ever since the judge's preliminary ruling had forced her out of the house she'd shared with Ryan. "Take a shower," Pat ordered. "I'll make dinner. Then you sleep." In the bathroom, Claire stripped off her ruined shirt and bra, both still damp with milk. She looked at herself in the mirror, 34 years old, dark circles under her eyes, breasts swollen and aching. This was grief. This was what losing everything looked like. She showered until the hot water ran out, then put on the oversized t-shirt and sweatpants that had become her uniform. When she emerged, Pat had made pasta and was pouring 2 large glasses of wine. "Tell me about the guy," Pat said, handing her a glass. "This Dominic Garrett." Claire sat at the small kitchen table. "Rich, scary, desperate to save his son." "Rich how?" "Private first-class cabin, designer suit, the kind of watch that costs more than my car, Rich." Pat pulled out her phone and typed. After a moment, her eyebrows rose. "Holy hell, Dominic Garrett, Garrett Hotel Group, net worth estimated at $200 million. Claire choked on her wine. "What?" Pat turned the phone around. The screen showed a professional photo of the man from the plane. Same dark eyes, same dangerous presence, but cleaned up for a corporate website. The article was titled "Garrett Hotels Expands Luxury Portfolio." Says here he's 38, widowed 3 months ago when his wife died in childbirth. No mention of the baby, but there wouldn't be. Rich people keep their kids out of the media. 3 months. His wife had died 3 months ago, and he was alone trying to care for a newborn who was starving to death. Claire's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. "Ms. Anderson?" The voice was cultured, professional. "This is Catherine Mills from Mr. Garrett's office. Mr. Garrett would like to speak with you at your earliest convenience. Would tomorrow morning work?" Claire's heart hammered. What does he want?" "He didn't share details with me, ma'am, only that it's important. Shall I schedule you for 10 tomorrow morning?" "I can send a car." "I can drive myself. Where?" Catherine gave her an address in Malibu. After she hung up, Claire stared at her phone. "He wants to see me," she told Pat. "Of course he does. You saved his kid's life. He probably wants to say thank you properly. Maybe write you a big check." But Claire had seen the look in Dominic Garrett's eyes when his son had finally stopped crying. That hadn't been simple gratitude. That had been something deeper, more desperate. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on Pat's couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. At 9:30 the next morning, she was driving up Pacific Coast Highway toward Malibu, following GPS directions to an address that turned out to be a massive glass and steel mansion perched on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. Security gates, cameras, a guard who checked her ID before letting her through. What kind of hotel executive needed this much security? The front door opened before she could knock. A woman in her 60s, elegant and severe, greeted her. "Ms. Anderson, I'm Teresa, the house manager. Mr. Garrett is waiting in the nursery. Please follow me." The house was stunning, all clean lines and ocean views and art that probably cost more than Claire would make in 10 years, but she barely noticed. She was too busy trying to calm her racing heart. Teresa led her upstairs to a room decorated in soft blues and grays, and there was Dominic Garrett, standing by a window with his son in his arms. He looked different in daylight, in casual clothes, jeans and a white button-down shirt. Still dangerous, but more human somehow. The baby was awake and alert, looking infinitely better than he had on the plane. "Ms. Anderson," Dominic said, turning. "Thank you for coming." "How is he?" Claire asked, her nurse instincts immediately focusing on the baby. "Better. He ate 4 ounces this morning." Dominic looked down at his son. "But he's refusing the bottle again. I've tried everything." He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. The baby, she still didn't know his name, turning his face away from the bottle, crying, looking toward the door like he was searching for something. Looking for her. Claire felt her chest tighten. Has he been evaluated? Feeding therapy? Speech pathology? "Every specialist in Los Angeles," Dominic said. "They all say the same thing. Psychological rejection of artificial nipples. He was breastfed by his mother for 2 weeks before." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Before we lost her." "I'm so sorry," Claire said softly. "Tyler associates nursing with safety, with comfort. Formula is foreign to him. You gave him what he needed on that plane. Now he won't accept anything else." Tyler. The baby's name was Tyler. Dominic stepped closer to her, his eyes intense. "I want to hire you, Claire, as Tyler's private medical nurse." Claire stared at him. "Mr. Garrett." "Dominic, please." "Dominic, I can't just $250,000 for 6 months," he said. "Live-in position here in Malibu. Full medical benefits, your own suite, complete autonomy over Tyler's care schedule." Claire's mouth went dry. $250,000. That was more than she'd make in 3 years as a staff nurse. "That's insane money for a nursing position," she managed. "It's not just nursing," Dominic said. "It's saving my son's life every day. And Claire, I've done my research. I know you're going through a divorce. I know you need financial stability. I know you lost your daughter and you're in pain. What I'm asking might be re-traumatizing. But Tyler needs you, and I think maybe you need him too." Claire felt tears prick her eyes. "That's manipulative." "It's honest." His voice softened. "You could have walked away on that plane. You didn't. Help us for 6 months. Get the money you need for your divorce. Give Tyler the chance to thrive. Then walk away with a clear conscience if that's what you want." Claire looked at the baby in his arms. Tyler was watching her with bright, alert eyes. When he saw her looking, he smiled. A real, genuine baby smile that made her heart crack open. She needed money. She needed a home. She needed a purpose that wasn't just drowning in grief. This was insane. This was professional suicide. This was 6 months, she heard herself say. Contract in writing, professional boundaries. "When the 6 months end, send you help me transition Tyler to bottles and I walk away." Dominic's face flooded with relief. "Deal." He extended his hand and Claire shook it. His grip was warm, firm, and sent another unexpected jolt through her. "You won't regret this," he said. But as Claire left the mansion an hour later, contract signed and move-in date set for 3 days from now, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a decision that would change her life in ways she couldn't possibly predict. 2 days later, she stood in the Los Angeles County Courthouse again, this time for what should have been a routine hearing. But nothing about her life was routine anymore. Ryan's lawyer stood up, a shark in a $5,000 suit. "Your Honor, we have new evidence regarding Ms. Anderson's mental state." He played a video on a laptop, airport security footage, showing Claire entering the airplane bathroom with a stranger's baby. "My client's wife is engaging in inappropriate, unsupervised contact with wealthy male patients. She's providing bodily fluids to strangers without medical supervision. This demonstrates unsound mental state following their daughter's death. She's now moved into this man's home as his private nurse for an obscene salary." Claire's lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, my client provided emergency medical care to a dying infant. Without documentation," Ryan's lawyer cut in. "Without liability waivers. Without her hospital's knowledge. Your Honor, this is a woman in crisis making dangerous decisions." Ryan leaned forward in his chair, fake concern plastered on his face. "Claire, I'm worried about you. You need help." In the gallery behind him, Jessica sat with her pregnant belly prominently displayed. She was wearing the necklace Claire had given her for her last birthday. When their eyes met, Jessica smiled and mouthed, "He's mine now." Judge Catherine Brennan looked at Claire over her reading glasses. "Ms. Anderson, I'm ordering a psychiatric evaluation before we proceed, and I'm requesting the California Board of Nursing investigate your conduct. This hearing is continued for 60 days. Claire's lawyer tried to protest, but the judge was already standing. Court dismissed. In the bathroom afterward, Claire gripped the sink with shaking hands. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. Tyler asking for you, when are you home? Home. He'd called it home. Another text from Ryan. This doesn't have to be ugly. Drop the alimony claim and I'll drop the mental health concerns. A text from Jessica with just a photo, ultrasound image, pink heart emoji. Claire drew her fist back and punched the mirror. Glass shattered. Blood ran down her hand. She slid to the bathroom floor and sobbed. The door opened. Pat's voice. Honey, your hand. Everything I do out of love gets weaponized, Claire choked out. I helped a baby, and now I'm the crazy one. What's wrong with me? Pat knelt beside her. Nothing. Everything is wrong with them. In the car afterward, her hand wrapped in gauze, Claire made a decision. She was done letting Ryan and Jessica destroy her. She was done apologizing for having a heart. She was done with all of it. Tomorrow she'd move into Dominic Garrett's house. She'd take care of Tyler. She'd take the $250,000 and she'd rebuild her life from the ground up. And if the nursing board came after her, if Ryan's lawyers tried to paint her as unstable, if the whole world judged her, let them. She'd saved a baby's life. And she'd do it again. The security guard at the gate checked Claire's ID for a solid 2 minutes before waving her through. As she drove up the long driveway, she counted 3 more guards patrolling the grounds and noticed cameras everywhere. What kind of hotel executive lived like this? Marcus was waiting at the front door, 6'4", ex-military bearing. The kind of man who could probably kill you 6 different ways before you hit the ground. He gave her a professional nod. Ms. Anderson, I'm Marcus Webb, head of security. Welcome to the Garrett estate. I'll give you the security briefing before we get you settled. Claire followed him inside, her single battered suitcase feeling pathetic in the gleaming entryway. Cameras on all exterior doors and perimeter, Marcus said, leading her through the house. Panic buttons in every room, here, here, and here. He pointed to discrete buttons mounted on walls. Don't open the gates without clearance. Don't give anyone the security codes. If you see anything unusual, you tell me immediately. Why does Dominic need this much security? Claire asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. Mr. Garrett values his privacy, and there are people who'd like to see him fail. It was a non-answer, but Claire didn't push. She was tired, her hand throbbed where she'd punched the mirror, and she just wanted to see Tyler. Her suite was beyond anything she'd imagined. An entire wing with a bedroom, office, sitting area, and private bathroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean. The furniture probably cost more than everything she'd owned in her old life combined. Her cardboard boxes of belongings looked ridiculous in the corner. On the pillow was a note in elegant handwriting. Make yourself at home. Tyler's nursery is through the connecting door. Thank you for being here. D. Claire walked through the connecting door into Tyler's nursery. The room was beautiful, soft blues and grays, a mural of clouds on one wall, the most expensive-looking crib she'd ever seen. Tyler was awake in the crib, making small cooing sounds. When he saw her, he smiled and reached up his tiny hands. Claire's heart cracked open. She picked him up, cradling him carefully, and he immediately nestled into her, searching for milk. Let's get you fed, little man, she whispered. She just settled into the rocking chair when Dominic appeared in the doorway. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, still wearing yesterday's clothes. You haven't slept, Claire said. Couldn't. He leaned against the door frame. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him on that plane, dying. And you, saving him. Claire adjusted her shirt to nurse Tyler, hyper-aware of Dominic's presence. It's what any nurse would do. No, Dominic said quietly. It's what you did. Most people would have walked past, would have judged, would have decided it wasn't their problem. Tyler latched on and immediately relaxed. Claire stroked his soft hair, the gesture so familiar it hurt. Isabella used to sing to him, Dominic said after a moment. I don't remember the songs. The grief in his voice was raw enough to make Claire's throat tight. She started humming softly, then singing, Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Dominic's face crumpled for just a second before he controlled it. When Tyler finished nursing and fell asleep, Claire placed him gently in his crib. "Thank you," Dominic said, "for being here, for helping us." "Just let me help him," Claire said. "That's enough." But as he left and she stood looking at the sleeping baby, Claire realized nothing about this situation was simple. She'd signed a contract to be Tyler's nurse for 6 months. Professional, bounded, clear. So why did it already feel like so much more? The first month passed in a blur of feedings and routines. Claire fell into a rhythm with Tyler, feeding every 3 hours, working with pediatric specialists to monitor his weight gain, documenting everything meticulously, because she knew the nursing board would come calling eventually. Tyler thrived. He gained weight. His color improved. He hit every developmental milestone. The pediatrician called it miraculous. "Whatever you're doing," Dr. Santos said at Tyler's 4-month checkup, "keep doing it." But it wasn't just Tyler who was healing. Claire found herself sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Found herself laughing at Tyler's baby babbles. Found herself feeling almost human again. Pat visited every week, bringing takeout and wine and reality checks. "You look better," Pat said one evening, sitting in Claire's suite while Tyler slept. "Less haunted." "Tyler needs me," Claire said. "It gives me purpose." "And the hot billionaire?" Pat raised an eyebrow. "He needs you too?" Claire felt her face heat. "It's not like that. It's professional." "Girl, I've seen professional. The way you talk about him? That ain't it." It was true that Dominic had become more present in their lives. He worked from home most days, his office just down the hall. He'd appear at feeding times, watching from the doorway. He started making Claire's coffee in the morning, exactly how she liked it. 3 creams and 1 sugar, even though she'd never told him. He'd leave books on her nightstand that matched her reading habits. He upgraded her car to something with better safety features. "You don't have to do all this," she told him one morning. "Yes, I do," he said simply. "You're taking care of what matters most to me." Late one evening, they ended up on the couch together, with Tyler asleep between them, watching a documentary about ocean life that Claire loved. When they both reached for the remote, their hands touched. The contact sent electricity up Claire's arm. They both froze. "Claire, Dominic said softly. Tyler woke with a cry, and the moment shattered. Claire fled to the nursery, her heart hammering. This was bad. She was developing feelings for her employer. The man paying her to nurse his child, the man who was still grieving his dead wife. She needed to maintain boundaries. Keep this professional. But boundaries got a lot harder to maintain when, 3 weeks into her second month, she woke at 6 in the morning to the sound of her front door being breached. "FBI, search warrant!" Claire grabbed her robe and ran into the hallway. Tyler was screaming in his nursery. Armed agents were everywhere, tearing through rooms, confiscating computers and files. Marcus appeared at her side. "Ms. Anderson, stay calm. Let me see the warrant." Claire ran to Tyler's nursery and scooped him up, her heart hammering. What the hell was happening? An FBI agent in a suit appeared. "Where's Dominic Garrett?" "I'm here." Dominic came down the stairs, already dressed despite the early hour. "What's this about?" "You're under investigation for money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy. We're seizing all financial records." The words hit Claire like a physical blow. Money laundering, racketeering, those were mob words, criminal words. She watched, frozen, as agents spent the next 3 hours systematically taking apart Dominic's life. When they finally left, the house felt violated. Claire stood in the living room, still holding Tyler, and stared at Dominic. "Tell me this is a mistake," she said. He looked tired, defeated. "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated. Are you a criminal?" Long silence. Too long. "My hotels are legitimate," Dominic finally said. "But I also provide financial services to people the government doesn't approve of." "What people?" But Claire already knew. She could see it in his face. The kind you don't ask questions about. "Oh my God." Claire felt the room spin. "You're laundering money for the mob." Dominic ran a hand through his hair. "My grandfather built relationships with certain families. When he died, I inherited those relationships. I've been trying to get out for 3 years. They don't let you just walk away." "And Tyler?" Claire's voice rose. "You brought your son into this?" "Tyler is why I'm getting out." Dominic's control cracked. Why do you think I need armed guards? Bulletproof windows? Why I am so careful? Claire, I'm not a killer. I don't hurt people. I'm just the banker. That's still illegal. That's still... Claire couldn't finish. I know. His voice was quiet. I'm working with the FBI to untangle it, but it takes time. They want me to testify against the families. Then Tyler and I enter witness protection and start over. Claire backed toward the nursery. I need to think. She called Pat from her room while Tyler nursed. He's a criminal, Pat. I'm living with a criminal. Is Tyler in danger? I don't think so. Dominic wouldn't. Then why are you really calling me? Silence, then, because I have feelings for him and I don't trust my judgment anymore. Pat was quiet for a moment. Honey, your judgment is fine. You saw a baby dying and you helped. You saw a man trying to be a good father and you stayed. The question is, can you live with the gray areas? That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She researched Dominic online, found articles about the FBI investigation, forum speculation about organized crime. But she also found charity work, children's hospitals he'd funded, anonymous donations to causes that mattered. At midnight, she found him in his office, staring at financial documents. Tell me everything, she said. No more secrets. And he did. His grandfather's connections, his father's expansion, inheriting an empire built on blood money. When Isabella got pregnant, I told them I wanted out, he said. They said after Tyler was born, we could discuss it. Then Isabella died in childbirth, and Tyler became leverage. They threatened your son? Not directly, but the message was clear. My cooperation keeps Tyler safe. He looked at her, vulnerability in those dark eyes. I'm trapped until I give the FBI what they need to take down the families. Then Tyler and I disappear into witness protection. How long? 6 months to a year. That's when my contract ends, Claire said. I know, perfect timing, right? You can walk away clean. But neither of them moved. The space between them felt charged, dangerous. What if I don't want to walk away? Claire whispered. Dominic stood, closing the distance between them. Claire, you don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She met his eyes. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing Tyler. I'm choosing you. He kissed her then, desperate and hungry, like he'd been holding back for months. Claire kissed him back with equal fervor, months of restraint breaking like a dam. When they finally broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. If you stay, if you're with me, you become a target. Then protect me, Claire said, with everything I have. They slept together that night, tender and passionate and terrifying in its intensity. Afterward, lying in his arms with Tyler sleeping in the bassinet nearby, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in a year. Hope. The next month was the happiest Claire had been since before Lily died. She and Dominic no longer hid their relationship. She moved into his room officially, and Tyler's nursery connected to theirs. They became a family, unconventional and complicated, but real. Morning started with Dominic kissing her awake, Tyler between them, babbling happily. They'd have breakfast together on the terrace overlooking the ocean. Dominic worked from home most days so he could be near them. Claire's divorce proceedings were moving forward. Dominic's lawyers, expensive and ruthless, had demolished every argument Ryan's team made. The psychiatric evaluation came back clean. The nursing board quietly dropped their investigation after Dominic's legal team presented evidence that Claire had provided emergency medical care that saved Tyler's life. Ryan was losing. Finally, after months of him winning everything, he was losing. Jessica sent fewer texts. Ryan stopped calling. Claire felt like maybe, finally, she could breathe. One evening, after Tyler was asleep, Dominic took her to the private beach below the house. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Move into my room permanently, as he said. No more pretending we're just employer and employee. What about Tyler? He needs to see his parents together. Claire froze. I'm not his mother. Dominic turned to face her, his expression intense. You are in every way that matters. Claire, when this is over, when we're free from all of this, marry me. Her heart stopped. Are you seriously proposing? I'm seriously telling you I love you and I want you in our lives forever. Claire felt tears stream down her face. Yes, When this is over, yes. They made love that night under the stars on the private beach, the sound of waves drowning out everything else. Afterward, lying in his arms, Claire felt complete for the first time in over a year. A week later, Tyler had his 6-month checkup. Dr. Santos examined him thoroughly, then turned to Claire and Dominic with a huge smile. He's completely healthy, 95th percentile for weight and height, hitting every milestone. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. They celebrated that night with dinner at home and champagne on the terrace. Tyler was in his high chair, making a mess with mashed peas, laughing every time Dominic made faces at him. FBI wants to meet next week, Dominic said. Final deposition. This is almost over. Claire's heart jumped. And then we disappear. New names, new life, witness protection, just the three of us. Claire looked at Tyler, then at Dominic. I can live with that. Good. He reached across the table and took her hand. Because I'm not letting you go. Either of you. That night they made love again, tender and slow, like they had all the time in the world. They didn't know they had less than 24 hours before their perfect life imploded. Claire woke the next morning feeling happy and content. She made pancakes while Dominic gave Tyler his morning bottle. Tyler was getting better at taking bottles now, which meant the weaning process could start soon. In a few months, Claire's contract would be up, but she wasn't going anywhere. She was staying. She was going to marry this man and help raise his son, and Claire. Dominic's voice was strange. Turn on the TV. She turned from the stove to see him staring at his tablet, his face pale. What's wrong? Turn on the TV, any news channel. Claire grabbed the remote. Every channel showed the same thing. FBI agents raiding properties. Dominic's hotels. His office buildings, his restaurants. The banner read, Breaking FBI Raids Garrett Hotel Empire in Multi-State Operation. A reporter stood in front of one of Dominic's hotels. Sources say Dominic Garrett has been cooperating with federal investigators for months, potentially betraying mob families who trusted him. The investigation involves money laundering, racketeering, and connections to organized crime families from New York to Chicago. Claire's phone exploded with notifications, news alerts, unknown numbers calling. Dominic's phone was ringing nonstop. He answered one call, his face going harder with each word he heard. How bad? He asked whoever was on the line. Marcus appeared in the doorway, blood streaking from a cut on his temple. Boss, we need to move, now. The families know you've been cooperating. How bad? Dominic repeated. 3 contracts issued, 1 on you, 2 us on anyone close to you. Claire felt ice flood her veins. Tyler, Teresa's moving him to the safe house, Marcus said. You both need to go. Now. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Claire was handed a bag and told to pack only essentials. She grabbed clothes, Tyler's favorite blanket. Nothing else mattered. Armed guards swarmed the house. SUVs pulled up outside. Teresa appeared with Tyler, already strapped into a car seat. I've got everything he needs, Ms. Anderson. Formula, diapers, clothes. Claire took Tyler from her, holding him close. He was crying, sensing the fear in the air. It's okay, baby, she whispered, even though nothing was okay. It's okay. In the SUV surrounded by armed guards, racing toward a safe house in Pasadena, Claire tried to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, she'd been planning a wedding. Now she was running for her life. Her phone buzzed. News alert. She made the mistake of opening it. Nurse caught in organized crime scandal. The article had photos of her entering the mansion, on the beach with Tyler, kissing Dominic. The text was worse. Sources confirmed Claire Anderson, 34, has been living with suspected mob financier Dominic Garrett for 3 months. Anderson, currently in divorce proceedings, allegedly accepted $250,000 to provide personal services. The implication was clear. They were painting her as a prostitute. Her phone rang. Hospital administrator. Claire, I'm sorry, you're suspended pending investigation. What? I haven't done anything illegal. You're living with someone under federal investigation. The optics alone, I have to protect the hospital. Click, email from the nursing board. Emergency hearing scheduled regarding ethics violations. Text from Ryan. Saw the news. Looks like you have a type. Rich criminals. At least I was faithful to American law. Text from Jessica. Ryan says your nursing license is toast. Guess you'll need that mob boyfriend to support you now. Oh, wait. Crying, laughing emoji. Claire stared at her phone, feeling everything she'd rebuilt shatter around her. I'll fix this, Dominic said beside her. My lawyers will. Your lawyers can't fix this, Claire's voice broke. I'm accused of being a mob mistress. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. Ryan wins. Jessica wins. I lose. I always lose. Tyler was crying now, feeding off her panic. Claire tried to calm him, but she was shaking too hard. I should have stayed broken, she whispered. Every time I try to help, try to love, I lose everything. Dominic reached for her, but she pulled away. She couldn't deal with comfort right now. She needed to hold it together for Tyler. The safe house was a fortified apartment in Pasadena. Reinforced doors, security monitors, armed guards. It felt like a prison. Pat arrived that evening, escorted by security. She took one look at Claire and pulled her into a hug. This is my life now, Claire said, living in a war zone. Does he love you? Pat asked. Yes. Then he's the right man, just bad timing. Claire laughed bitterly. That's my specialty. 3 days into hiding, FBI agents arrived. Mr. Garrett, we can offer protection, but you need to testify against the families, full cooperation, public testimony. I've given you everything already, Dominic said. We need you on the stand. That's the deal. What about Claire, Tyler? They'll be protected. Witness security for all of you until the trials conclude. How long? Claire asked. Could be 2 years. 2 years in hiding. 2 years of looking over their shoulders. 2 years of Tyler growing up in fear. But what choice did they have? On day 5, they signed the agreement. The FBI would move them to a secure facility tomorrow, then into witness protection after Dominic's testimony. That night, lying in bed with Tyler between them in the safe house, Dominic held Claire close. We made it, he said. We're safe now. Claire wanted to believe him. Is this going to be our life? Always running? No, after testimony, we disappear. New names. Real peace. He kissed her forehead. We'll get through this. Claire closed her eyes and tried to believe him. She should have known better. She should have known that the worst was yet to come. At 3 in the morning, Claire woke to the sound of an explosion. The blast tore through the east wall of the safe house, and Claire's world became smoke and screaming and the sound of automatic gunfire. Dominic threw himself over her and Tyler, his body a shield. Stay down, Tyler was shrieking, terrified. Claire clutched him to her chest, trying to protect him with her body. East side breached. Marcus's voice shouted from somewhere in the chaos. Men in tactical gear stormed through the hole in the wall. Not FBI uniforms. Wrong patches. Wrong everything. Dominic was up in fighting, took down 2 men with brutal efficiency. Claire had never seen him move like that, lethal and precise. Marcus was engaging near the door, buying time. Run, Marcus shouted at Claire. Panic room, go! Claire ran toward the bedroom, Tyler screaming in her arms. She could hear fighting behind her, grunts of pain, gunfire, chaos. She almost made it to the panic room. A hand grabbed her from behind, yanking her backward. She bit down hard on the attacker's arm, kicked backward, fought with everything she had. Dominic! She saw him across the room, fighting 3 men. He looked up at her scream, and one of the men got a hit in. Dominic went down. Claire! He was fighting to get to her, but there were too many of them. Someone threw a bag over Claire's head. She felt hands ripping Tyler from her arms. No, Tyler, give him back! But they were dragging her toward the hole in the wall. She could hear Tyler's screams getting farther away, could hear Dominic shouting her name. Then she was being thrown into a vehicle. The engine started. They were moving. The bag was pulled from her head. Claire found herself in the back of a van, facing an older man in an expensive suit. Silver hair, cold eyes, the kind of face that had ordered deaths without losing sleep. Miss Anderson, he said pleasantly. The famous nurse. We finally meet. Where's Tyler? Claire's voice came out raw. Where's my baby? The child is in another vehicle, unharmed, for now. He pulled out a tablet and showed her a message already typed out. Your woman and child for your financial records and testimony recantation. Tonight. Or they die slowly. Claire stared at the words, feeling ice fill her veins. "Who are you?" "Vittorio Castellano." When he said it like she should know the name. "Dominic Garrett's father killed my sons 10 years ago. Took my territory, my power, everything." His expression hardened. "And then his son thought he could just walk away, go legitimate, while my boys rot in the ground?" "Tyler is innocent," Claire whispered. "He's just a baby. He's a Garrett. That's guilt enough." They drove for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. When the van stopped and they pulled her out, Claire found herself in an abandoned warehouse somewhere industrial. The smell of rust and old fish filled the air. They tied her to a chair in a large open space. Through dirty windows, she could see it was still dark outside. How much time had passed? Where was Tyler? Hours crawled by. Claire's breasts ached. Tyler hadn't nursed. She could feel milk leaking through her shirt. Her arms hurt from the restraints. But none of that mattered. Where was her baby? Vittorio's men came and went, talking in Italian. One of them saw her crying and laughed. "Baby's probably starving by now," screaming his head off. "Please," Claire begged, "please let me feed him. He needs to eat. Please." "When Garrett delivers what we want." More hours. Claire slipped in and out of consciousness. She thought about Lily, about how she'd failed to save her daughter. Now she was failing to save Tyler, too. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the empty room, to Lily's memory, to Tyler wherever he was, to Dominic. "I'm so sorry." This was her fault. If she hadn't gotten involved, if she'd just walked past that crying baby on the plane, none of this would have happened. Tyler would be safe. Dominic would be safe. Everyone she loved ended up hurt. The door opened. Claire looked up, expecting Vittorio. It was Marcus, bleeding from multiple wounds, moving like every step hurt, but alive. "Ms. Anderson." He put a finger to his lips, then moved behind her to cut the zip ties. "Stay quiet." "How did you—" "Later, where's Tyler?" "I don't know. They took him in a different car. I don't know where he is." Marcus handed her an earpiece. "Boss, I have her. Baby location unknown." Dominic's voice crackled through, raw with emotion. "Claire, thank God. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but Tyler—" Her voice broke. "Dominic, I don't know where he is." "We'll find him." The certainty in his voice steadied her. "I promise you, we'll find our son." "Our son, not my son, ours." Claire held on to that as Marcus led her out of the warehouse and into a vehicle, as they raced through pre-dawn streets toward an FBI mobile command center. As they pulled up to see FBI agents swarming everywhere, coordinates being shouted, tactical teams gearing up. And there was Dominic. His face was a mess, split lip, black eye, blood dried on his temple. His ribs were wrapped under his torn shirt. He'd been beaten badly, but when he saw Claire, his face crumpled with relief. They collided in the middle of the command center, holding each other like they'd both survived drowning. "I thought I lost you," he whispered into her hair. "I'm here. I'm here." Claire pulled back to look at him. "But Tyler—" "We're tracking Castellano's known locations," an FBI agent said. "We'll find the baby." "I'm giving Vittorio everything he wants," Dominic said. His voice was flat, defeated. "I don't care about testimony. I don't care about deals. I want my son back." "No," Claire said. Everyone stopped, looked at her. "No, we don't negotiate with him. Claire, he has our son, and if you give him what he wants, he'll kill all three of us anyway." Claire's voice was steady now, even though her hands were shaking. "You know that. He's not letting us walk away." The FBI agent nodded grimly. "She's right. Castellano doesn't leave witnesses. You give him everything, you sign our death warrants." "Then what do we do?" Dominic's voice cracked. "How do I get Tyler back?" Claire's mind was racing. She'd had hours to think in that warehouse, hours to listen to Vittorio's men talk, hours to piece together what kind of man he was. "We give him his show," she said, "but we control the script." Everyone stared at her. "Vittorio wants you broken," she continued, looking at Dominic. "He wants you to watch everything you love burn. His ego needs the performance, so we give it to him." "What are you suggesting?" the FBI agent asked. Claire turned to face them all. "I go in, wearing a wire. I offer to trade myself for Tyler. Vittorio thinks Dominic abandoned us. You plan a fake news story saying Dominic took a deal and left his family behind. Vittorio will believe it because that's what he would do. He'll want to gloat. And while he's gloating, I get him to confess everything on tape. Absolutely not, Dominic said immediately. Listen tomorrow. Claire grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Tyler is my son, too. I've fed him every day for 4 months. I've rocked him to sleep. I've loved him with everything I have. I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you, I'm getting our baby back. The FBI agent studied her. It could work. Castellano's old school. He'll underestimate a woman. That's what I'm counting on, Claire said. They spent the next 2 hours planning. The FBI outfitted Claire with a wire so small it was nearly invisible. A camera hidden in a button. Backup teams would surround the location. The second they had Vittorio's confession and knew Tyler's location, they'd breach. Dominic pulled her aside before she left. I can't let you do this, he said. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing this. She touched his bruised face gently. I need you to trust me. I do trust you. I'm terrified of losing you. You won't. She kissed him, soft and sure. We're getting our son back. Then we're going to disappear somewhere safe and be a family. That's the plan. Okay? Okay? But as Claire climbed into the unmarked FBI vehicle that would take her to Vittorio's location, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was the most dangerous thing she'd ever done. And if it went wrong, Tyler would be the one who paid the price. The abandoned cannery in San Pedro smelled like rust and old fish in desperation. Claire walked in with her hands visible, wearing the wire, knowing that dozens of FBI agents were positioned outside waiting for her signal. Vittorio's men searched her roughly, but the FBI tech was good. They missed the wire, missed the camera. They led her through the maze of corroded metal and dripping water toward the main floor. And then she heard it. Tyler's cry. Her milk let down immediately, soaking through her shirt. She didn't care. She followed the sound through a doorway and saw him. In a bassinet in a side room, visible through a grimy window, crying, red-faced, clearly hungry and scared. Every instinct screamed at her to run to him. But Vittorio was standing in the main room, and she had to get the confession first. Had to make this worth it. I'm here, she said, walking toward him. Let Tyler go. Vittorio smiled like this was all a pleasant business transaction. Where's Garrett? Claire delivered the line they'd practiced. Gone. Took the FBI deal. Left us behind. Vittorio laughed. You expect me to believe he abandoned you? The woman he loves? His son? Check the news. One of Vittorio's men pulled out a phone, showed him the screen. The FBI had planted a fake article. Garrett enters witness protection. Family left behind. Complete with quotes from anonymous sources and photos of Dominic being escorted by federal agents. Vittorio studied the article, then studied Claire. You're lying. Then kill me. Claire met his eyes, channeling every ounce of desperate courage she had. But let Tyler go first. He's an innocent baby. The Garrett heir is never innocent. Vittorio circled her like a shark. His blood is corrupted. His father destroyed my family. My sons are dead because of them. Tyler is 3 months old, Claire said, her voice rising. He's guilty of nothing except being born to the wrong father. You love that baby. Yes. You love Dominic too. Claire forced herself to look broken. I was stupid enough to yes. Then you'll suffer perfectly. Vittorio's smile was cruel. I'm going to let you watch that baby starve, just like he nearly did on that plane. Poetic, no? Claire's hands clenched. Why do you hate Dominic this much? And then Vittorio gave her exactly what she needed. The FBI was recording every word. 10 years ago, Garrett's father destroyed my family, killed my sons, shot them in front of me, took my territory in New Jersey, my operations in Atlantic City, left me with nothing. His voice was filled with venom. Then Dominic inherited everything and had the audacity to try to leave, to go legitimate while my boys are in the ground. He detailed it all, the murders, the racketeering, named other crime families, described hits he'd personally ordered, gave the FBI enough to take down 4 families in one confession. Claire waited until he'd incriminated himself completely. Then she reached slowly into her pocket. Vittorio's men tensed, hands going to their guns. She pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. While you were busy hunting us, the FBI froze your accounts. $47 million, gone. Seized under RICO. Vittorio's face turned purple. What? Dominic didn't abandon us. Claire's voice was steady now. He baited you, and you fell for it. Understanding dawned on Vittorio's face, followed by rage. You bitch! You've been recording this whole time. You're under arrest, Vittorio. The doors exploded open. FBI, hands up! Gunfire erupted. Vittorio's men engaged the FBI tactical teams. Claire ran for Tyler's room, keeping low. Bullets whined past her head. She heard screaming, shouting, chaos. She burst through the door, grabbed Tyler from the bassinet, and curled her body around him as more gunfire erupted. Tyler was screaming, terrified. Claire held him against her chest and looked for an exit. Vittorio appeared in the doorway, gun raised. You ruined everything, he snarled. You stupid! A shot rang out. Vittorio dropped. Dominic stood in the doorway behind him, supported by Marcus, gun still raised. Blood soaked through the bandages on his ribs, and he looked like he was barely standing, but his aim had been true. Don't ever touch my family. Then FBI agents were swarming in, securing the scene. Paramedics appeared. Someone tried to take Tyler from Claire's arms, but she couldn't let go. Ma'am, we need to examine the baby. He's fine. Claire was crying now, holding Tyler so tight he squirmed. He's fine. He's fine. Dominic appeared beside her, pulling them both into his arms. Tyler between them, Claire's face pressed against Dominic's chest, all three of them alive and together. You did it, Dominic whispered. You saved him. You saved all of us. Outside the cannery, in the gray light of dawn, paramedics checked Tyler thoroughly. He was dehydrated, but okay. Hungry and scared, but unharmed. Claire sat in the back of an ambulance and nursed him while FBI agents swarmed around securing the scene. She didn't care that dozens of people were watching. She didn't care about anything except Tyler latching on desperately, feeding, calming down. The FBI agent in charge approached them. Mr. Garrett, we got enough from Castellano's confession to take down 4 families. Your testimony is still needed, but the bulk of the work is done. And us? Dominic asked. His arm was around Claire's shoulders, holding them both. Witsec is still an option, but Castellano was the primary threat. With him dead, the agent shrugged. The families might leave you alone now. Your cooperation bought you goodwill. You're valuable to us and costly to target. Might? Claire asked. We can't guarantee anything, but you'd be significantly less interesting to them now. They spent the rest of the day being debriefed, giving statements, being examined by doctors. Tyler was admitted to the hospital for observation. Dehydration, they said, but nothing serious. He'd be fine with fluids and monitoring. Claire refused to leave his side. She sat in the hospital room, Tyler sleeping peacefully in the crib beside her bed, and tried to process everything that had happened. Dominic appeared in the doorway. His face was cleaned up, stitches above his eye, ribs wrapped properly. He looked exhausted. Hey, he said softly. How is he? Perfect. Sleeping. The doctor says he will be fine. Dominic sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I'm sorry, he finally said, for all of it. I should have told you everything from the beginning. Should have let you walk away before you got pulled into this nightmare. If you had, Tyler would be dead, Claire interrupted, and I'd still be broken. Dominic, I chose this. I chose you. I chose Tyler. I don't regret it. Even after everything that happened, your career, your reputation, will recover. The FBI said they'd testify that I was under duress, that I helped take down a major crime organization. My nursing license will be reinstated. The hospital will apologize. And even if none of that happens, she took his hand. Even if I never work as a nurse again, it was worth it. Tyler is alive. You're alive. We're together. That's what matters. Dominic's eyes were wet. I love you so damn much. I love you too. He kissed her, gentle and careful of his split lip. When he pulled back, he was smiling. FBI says we have options. Witsec if we want it, or we can try to live normally with security. The choice is ours. Claire looked at Tyler, sleeping peacefully in his crib. At this tiny baby who'd brought her back to life, who'd led her to Dominic, who'd given her a reason to keep breathing. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you safe. I want Tyler safe. I want to be a family." Dominic touched her face. "Everything else is negotiable." A doctor knocked and entered. "Ms. Anderson, we ran some standard tests when you came in. I need to speak with you about something." Claire tensed. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing wrong." The doctor smiled. "You're pregnant, about 14 weeks. Congratulations." Silence filled the room. Claire stared at the doctor, her brain refusing to process the words. That's not possible. I was told after losing my daughter that I might never." After traumatic loss, some women experience increased fertility. It's rare but documented. The doctor's smile widened. "Would you like to see the ultrasound?" Claire looked at Dominic. He looked as shocked as she felt. 14 weeks, he said slowly. "That was the night you proposed," Claire whispered. "The night we decided to stop being careful." After the doctor left, they sat in stunned silence. Tyler slept peacefully. Somewhere in Claire's body, another baby was growing, their baby. "Why didn't you tell me?" Dominic finally asked. "I didn't know." Claire's voice cracked. "With everything happening, the stress, running, hiding, I wasn't tracking. I haven't had regular periods since Lily. I just thought—" She started crying. Dominic pulled her into his arms, careful of his injured ribs. Hey, it's okay. We're okay." "Are we?" Claire looked up at him. "I just got kidnapped by the mob while carrying your baby. Our life is insane. How do we bring a child into this?" "The same way we've been handling everything else." Dominic touched her face. "Together, one day at a time. And Claire," his voice broke, "Tyler's going to be a big brother." Despite everything, Claire laughed. "This is insane. Completely insane." He kissed her forehead. "Want to be insane with me?" "Yes," she kissed him back. "Yes, I really do." 3 days later, they left the hospital as a family. Tyler was healthy. Claire was cleared medically. Dominic's injuries would heal. The FBI had taken down 4 crime families. Vittorio was dead. The threat was over. They could finally breathe. But as they drove away from the hospital, Claire couldn't shake one thought. What kind of life could they build now? After everything that had happened? After all the chaos and danger and near-death experiences? She was about to find out. 1 year later, the farmhouse in Bend, Oregon, was nothing like the Malibu mansion. It was small, modest, surrounded by mountains and pine trees instead of ocean views. The nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Cell service was spotty. The winters were brutal. Claire loved it. She stood in the garden, 8 months pregnant, watching Tyler chase butterflies. He was 14 months old now, walking confidently, chattering in toddler babble that occasionally formed real words. "Mama, Mama, look!" "Mama," the words still made her heart swell every time he said it. "I see, sweetie. That's a beautiful butterfly." Tyler giggled and kept running. Claire put a hand on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick. Lily Grace, they were naming her after Claire's first daughter. Dominic had insisted. "Your first daughter sent us this gift," he had said. "We honor her by naming our second daughter after her." The sound of a car in the driveway made Claire tense automatically, even though she knew who it was. Old habits died hard. Pat emerged from her ancient Honda, grinning. "You really drove 8 hours to see me?" Claire called out. "Are you kidding? I'm not missing the birth of baby Lily Grace." Pat hugged her carefully, mindful of the belly. "You look amazing, honey, all glowing and peaceful. I feel like a whale, a beautiful whale." Pat followed her inside, where Claire had tea already brewing. "Seriously, though, you look happier than I've ever seen you." It was true, the past year had been healing in ways Claire couldn't have imagined. After they'd left Los Angeles, after Dominic's testimony had sealed the convictions of dozens of crime family members, the FBI had offered them witness protection. They'd taken it. New names, new location, new lives. Dominic was now Michael Patterson, owner of Patterson Hardware in downtown Bend. Claire was doing telehealth nursing consultations from home. Tyler was thriving, and in a few weeks, they'd have a daughter. "Nursing license reinstated?" Pat asked, settling at the kitchen table. Officially, hospital sent a formal apology. The board dropped all charges once the FBI testified I'd helped take down a major crime organization. Claire poured tea. I could go back to hospital work if I wanted. But you don't want to? I like being home with Tyler, and soon with Lily. Claire touched her belly. I spent so many years giving everything to my career. Right now, I want to give everything to my family. Pat smiled. What about Ryan and Jessica? Claire had been waiting for that question. Ryan lost his law license. Ethics violation. He was caught misusing client funds to cover gambling debts. Jessica left him after their daughter was born. Took him for everything in the custody battle. Last I heard, she's working 2 jobs and raising Mia alone. Karma, Pat said with satisfaction. Yeah. Claire felt nothing when she thought about them now. No anger, no hurt, no vindication. Just nothing. Ryan tried to contact me last month. I blocked his number. Good for you. The sound of a truck pulling in made Tyler squeal with delight. Dada! Dada home! Dominic, Michael now, though Claire still thought of him as Dominic, came through the door in flannel and jeans, his hair longer than it used to be, a beard covering his jaw. He looked like a completely different person from the dangerous billionaire in the custom suit. Claire thought he had never been more attractive. Hey, beautiful. He kissed her, one hand going to her belly. How are my girls? Your daughter is using my bladder as a soccer ball, and your son has been chasing butterflies for 2 hours. Claire smiled. So basically perfect. Dominic scooped up Tyler, who launched into a detailed toddler explanation of his day that was maybe 20% understandable. Dominic listened like every word was profound wisdom. Pat stayed for dinner, and Marcus showed up with dessert, apple pie from the local bakery. Marcus had refused to leave them. He'd taken a new identity too, and now worked as the head of security for Patterson Hardware, which mostly meant he hung around making sure no one from Dominic's old life tracked them down. After Tyler was in bed, they sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. The kind of sky you couldn't see in Los Angeles. A sky that made you feel small and safe at the same time. Any news? Claire asked Marcus quietly. Vittorio's organization is completely dismantled. 3 families took plea deals. The 4th is still fighting, but they've got no interest in you anymore. You're yesterday's news. Marcus sipped his beer. You're really free. Free, Dominic repeated, like he was testing the word. Claire leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. Tyler was asleep inside. Their daughter was growing in her belly. They had friends, a home, a life. Do you miss it? She asked him later, after Pat and Marcus had left. The power, the money, the empire? Not for a second. Dominic turned to face her. I help people fix things now. Yesterday, I showed Mrs. Henderson how to repair her broken drawer. She paid me $15 and a plate of cookies. That felt better than closing any multi-million-dollar hotel deal ever did. Claire smiled. A man of the people now. A man who has everything that matters. He pulled her close, careful of her belly. You, Tyler, this life, it's more than I ever thought I'd get. Even living in Bend, Oregon? Running a hardware store? Especially that. He kissed her forehead. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That plane. The red-eye to L.A. Tyler screaming, dying, you appearing like an angel and saving his life. His voice got thick. If I hadn't taken that flight, if Tyler hadn't been sick, if you hadn't been brave enough to help, we would have never met. Tyler would be dead. I'd be alone. You'd still be drowning in grief. One decision changed everything, Claire agreed. The right decision. He placed his hand over hers on her belly. Sometimes the unthinkable thing is exactly what you need to do. 2 weeks later, Claire went into labor. It was fast, much faster than Lily's birth had been. Pat drove up from LA to be there. Marcus and Dominic paced in the living room while the midwife worked with Claire in the bedroom upstairs. At 3 in the morning, Lily Grace Patterson was born, 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with her father's dark hair and her mother's nose. Claire held her and cried. Happy tears this time, healing tears. She looks like her sister, she whispered. She looks like my Lily. Your first daughter sent us this gift, Dominic said, echoing the words he'd said when they chose the name. He was crying too, holding both Claire and the baby. She wanted you to have this. Tyler was allowed in an hour later, confused but delighted by the tiny human in Mama's arms. Baby? He asked, touching Lily's tiny hand with one finger. This is your sister, Claire told him. Lily Grace, she's going to love you so much. Tyler beamed. My baby. Later, after everyone had gone home and Tyler was back in his bed, and Lily was sleeping in the bassinet beside their bed, Claire and Dominic lay in the darkness, holding hands. We did it, Dominic said quietly. We survived. We built something real. We did. Claire squeezed his hand. You know what the therapist told me? She said sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help someone when you're broken yourself. That's when it means the most. You saved me, Dominic said. On that plane, in that moment, you saved both of us. We saved each other. They fell asleep like that, hands intertwined, their children safe, their future bright. The past didn't own them anymore. The fear didn't control them. The grief didn't define them. They were free. Really, truly free. The first year of Lily Grace's life passed in a beautiful blur of sleepless nights and baby giggles and toddler chaos. Tyler was the world's best big brother, gentle with his sister, protective, always wanting to help feed her or change her or make her laugh. Claire's nursing license was fully reinstated. She picked up more telehealth hours, seeing patients virtually from her home office. It felt good to be practicing nursing again, even if it was different than the PCU work she'd done before. Dominic's hardware store became the heart of the community. People came in not just for supplies, but to chat with Michael, to ask his advice, to be part of something. He hired 2 employees and taught them everything he knew about fixing things. Marcus remained their quiet guardian, though the need for him lessened every month. The crime families that had wanted Dominic dead had moved on. New leadership didn't care about old grudges. The FBI's prosecutions had shattered the organization so thoroughly that no one had time to worry about one man who'd gotten away. One evening in early December, almost 2 years after that flight to Los Angeles, Claire sat in her rocking chair nursing Lily while Tyler played with his toy trucks on the floor. The doorbell rang. Claire tensed automatically. It's okay, Dominic called from downstairs. It's just Pat and Marcus, early for Christmas dinner. They'd started hosting Christmas at the farmhouse. Pat and Marcus, a few neighbors, the employees from the hardware store, a chosen family, built from scratch. But as Claire came downstairs with Lily in her arms, she found unexpected guests. An older couple dressed warmly against the Oregon cold, standing in the entryway looking nervous. Her parents. Mom? Claire's voice came out as a whisper. Dad? She hadn't seen them since before Lily had died, since they'd blamed her for not checking the monitor sooner, for not somehow knowing their granddaughter would stop breathing. Since they'd sided with Ryan in the divorce, calling Claire unstable and dramatic. Claire! Her mother stepped forward, her eyes on Lily. We came to meet our granddaughter. How did you find me? Patricia told us. Her mom's voice cracked. Baby, we're so sorry. We were wrong about everything. About Ryan, about blaming you for Lily, about not supporting you. We were grieving and we handled it terribly, and we've spent 2 years regretting every word we said. Her father nodded, his eyes wet. We lost our granddaughter, but we don't want to lose our daughter too, or our new grandchildren. Tyler came running up. Who dat, Mama? Claire looked at Dominic. He gave her a small nod. Your choice. She looked at her parents, saw genuine remorse, saw grief and regret and hope. These are your grandparents, Claire told Tyler. Grandma Kate and Grandpa Jim. Her mother burst into tears. Can I hold her? Claire handed Lily over carefully. Watched her mother cradle her granddaughter with trembling hands. She looks just like your Lily, her father said softly. That same little nose. That's why we named her Lily Grace, Claire said, after my first daughter. They spent Christmas together, messy and emotional and healing. Claire's parents met Dominic, loved him immediately. They played with Tyler, held Lily, apologized a dozen more times. We read about what happened in Los Angeles, her father said quietly during dinner. About you helping take down that crime organization. Claire, we had no idea what you were going through. I'm okay now, Claire said. We all are. We're safe. We're happy. We're together. That's what matters. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. We're so proud of you, baby, for surviving, for being brave, for building this beautiful life. After they left, promising to visit again in the spring, Claire stood on the porch and cried. Dominic found her there. Happy tears? The happiest. She leaned into him. I have my parents back. Our kids will know their grandparent is, it feels complete. Good complete or scary complete? Good complete. Finally complete. Life continued to smooth out after that. Ryan stopped trying to contact her. Jessica faded into just a bad memory. The nursing board closed her case permanently. The FBI called once to say the last of the trials had concluded, guilty verdicts across the board, and they were no longer monitoring Dominic at all. Tyler started preschool. Lily grew into a happy, chunky baby who laughed at everything. Claire and Dominic got officially married at the local courthouse. Just them, Tyler, Lily, Pat, Marcus, and Claire's parents. Simple and perfect. One evening in late spring, after the kids were asleep, Dominic found Claire in the nursery. She was standing over Lily's crib, just watching her breathe. You do this every night, he said softly. I know, I can't help it. After losing Lily, I just need to see her breathing. He came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. Our Lily, both Lilies. They're both watching over us, I think. You think? I know, because how else do we get this lucky? How else does a dying baby on a plane lead to this? He gestured around the room, to the house, to their life. We shouldn't have survived all of it, but we did. Claire turned in his arms. You know what I've been thinking about? What? Writing a book about everything that happened. Changed names, obviously, but the story. About how helping someone when you're broken can save you both. What would you call it? Claire smiled. The unthinkable choice. I like it. He kissed her. You should write it. Someone needs to hear that story. So Claire started writing, late at night after the kids were asleep, during nap times, whenever she could steal moments. She wrote about grief and loss and finding purpose again. About the courage it takes to help someone when you're drowning yourself. About how families can be built, not just born. She wrote about that plane ride that changed everything. Tyler's second birthday party was chaos in the best way. A dozen kids from his preschool running around the backyard. Cake everywhere, Lily crying because someone popped a balloon. Claire stood on the porch holding Lily, watching Dominic help Tyler blow out his candles, and felt something she hadn't felt since before her first Lily died. Pure, uncomplicated joy. You look happy, Pat said, appearing beside her with a glass of wine. I am happy. Claire bounced Lily gently. Is that weird? After everything? No, honey, that's healing. The nursing board had officially closed Claire's case that week with a letter of commendation for her actions during the Castellano investigation. The hospital in LA had offered her job back if she ever wanted to return. She'd politely declined. Her book was nearly finished. A small press in Portland had expressed interest in publishing it. Nothing huge, but real. Ryan had reached out once more, a desperate email saying he'd made mistakes. Could they talk? He'd changed. Claire had deleted it without responding. That chapter of her life was closed. Jessica had apparently remarried. Someone new, someone richer. Claire had heard it through mutual acquaintances and felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy. Just a distant wish that Jessica would someday understand what real love actually looked like. Speech, someone called out. The birthday boy's parents need to give a speech. Dominic laughed and pulled Claire into the center of the party. Tyler was covered in frosting, grinning from ear to ear. When Tyler was 3 months old, Dominic began, his voice carrying across the yard. He was dying. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, was wasting away. And then an angel sat 3 rows behind us on a plane and did the bravest thing I've ever seen. He looked at Claire, his eyes wet. She saved my son's life. Then she saved mine. Tyler's alive today because one woman was brave enough to help a stranger when she was broken herself. Claire wiped her eyes with her free hand, and Tyler gave me a reason to keep living when I thought my life was over. He brought me back from grief, gave me a purpose, led me to a family I didn't know I needed. Tyler, understanding none of the emotional weight, just laughed and shoved more cake in his mouth. Later that night, after all the guests had left and the kids were finally asleep, Claire and Dominic sat on the porch swing exhausted. "Good party," Dominic said. "The best." Claire leaned against him. "You know what I've been thinking?" "What?" "That this is what Isabella would have wanted, for Tyler to be happy, healthy, loved, for you to find peace. She'd be glad we found each other." Dominic was quiet for a moment. "I think you're right. Isabella wanted a family for Tyler more than anything. She'd be glad he has you. And our Lily, my first Lily, I think she'd be happy we named our daughter after her, that her memory lives on." Claire touched Dominic's face. "We honor them by being happy, by living fully." "Agreed." He kissed her palm. "So let's keep doing that." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance in the yard, until Claire's phone buzzed with an email. "Oh my God," she breathed reading it. "The publisher. They want the book. They think it could be really big." Dominic whooped and pulled her into a kiss. "That's amazing. When do they want to publish?" 6 months. They want to do a whole marketing campaign around it. True story of courage and healing, they're calling it. Because that's what it is. Dominic looks serious now. "Claire, you're going to help so many people. Everyone who's lost someone. Everyone who's grieving. Everyone who thinks they can't go on. They'll read your story and see that you can survive. You can rebuild. You can find joy again." Claire felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I hope so. I really hope so." The book came out the following spring to reviews that called it raw and honest, and a testament to the human spirit. It sold modestly at first, then started gaining traction through word of mouth. Grief counselors recommended it. Mommy blogs reviewed it. Book clubs chose it. Claire did a few interviews, careful to keep certain details vague to protect their new identities. She talked about losing her daughter, about helping a stranger's baby, about finding love in unexpected places, about healing through helping others. She didn't talk about the FBI raids or the kidnapping or the mob connections. That wasn't the story she wanted to tell. She wanted to tell the story of hope. 3 months after publication, Claire got a message through her publisher's website. "Dear Claire, I just finished your book. I lost my son 2 years ago and have been unable to function since. Your story gave me hope that I might survive this. Thank you for being brave enough to share it. You saved my life today." Claire read it to Dominic that night, crying. "You're doing it," he said. "You're saving people again, just in a different way." Life continued to unfold in beautiful, ordinary ways. Tyler started kindergarten. Lily took her first steps. Marcus finally admitted he was seeing someone, a woman who ran the local bookstore. Pat got promoted at her hospital and bought a little weekend cabin near them in Oregon. Claire's parents visited every few months, rebuilding their relationship slowly. They'd apologized 100 times for how they'd handled Lily's death. Claire had forgiven them, though it had taken time. On the second anniversary of Lily Grace's birth, Claire found Dominic in the nursery late at night, holding their sleeping daughter. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Just thinking." He looked up at her. "About that plane, about how one decision changed everything. What if you hadn't helped Tyler that night?" "He would have died," Claire said simply, "and I would have lost everything. My son, my future, you, this life." He stood, carefully placing Lily in her crib. "One act of kindness from a broken woman saved 3 lives. Yours, mine, and Tyler's. Maybe 4 lives. Claire touched her belly. "I haven't told you yet, but I'm pregnant again." Dominic's face lit up like she'd given him the world. "Really?" "Really, about 6 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I said anything." He pulled her into a kiss that was tender and deep and full of promise. Another baby. Another chance at this beautiful chaos. "Are you happy?" "Are you kidding? I'm ecstatic." He pulled back to look at her. "How are you feeling about being pregnant again?" "Good. A little scared, but good. This time I'm not grieving my past. I'm excited for my future." "Our future," he corrected. "Our future," she agreed. They stood in the nursery, holding each other, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, Oregon rain pattered against the windows. Inside, they were warm and safe and loved. This was the life they'd built from the ashes. This was the family they'd created from grief. This was the future they'd fought for. and it was worth every moment of pain it had taken to get here. 3 years after that red-eye flight, Claire stood in her kitchen, making breakfast, while Tyler tried to teach 2-year-old Lil how to tie shoes in baby wham. Emma squawked from her high chair. Yes, Emma, baby number 3, born 8 months ago with her father's dark eyes and her mother's determination. The surprise pregnancy had turned into their biggest blessing yet. Mama, Lily not listening, Tyler complained. He was 4 now, starting real school in the fall, growing so fast it made Claire's heart ache. That's because Lily is 2, buddy. 2-year-olds don't listen. Claire scooped up Emma and settled her on her hip. But you're doing a great job teaching her. Dominic came in from his morning run, sweaty and grinning. Morning, beautiful family. Tyler launched himself at his dad. Lily toddled over, demanding up. Emma squealed at the chaos. This was their life now, chaotic and loud and perfectly imperfect. The book had become a bestseller, not blockbuster huge, but successful enough that Claire now did speaking engagements at grief counseling centers and hospitals. She talked about loss and healing and finding purpose again. She never mentioned the organized crime stuff. That wasn't the story people needed to hear. The story they needed was the one about getting on that plane broken and coming off it with just a purpose, about how helping someone when you're drowning can save you both. Big day today, Dominic said over breakfast. Marcus is proposing to Sarah tonight. About time, Claire laughed. They've been dating for 2 years. Marcus had found love with Sarah, the bookstore owner. She was perfect for him. Quiet, intelligent, tough enough to handle his past. They were getting married in the spring, and Tyler was going to be the ring bearer. Pat visited that afternoon with news of her own. I'm retiring, she announced. I've got enough saved, and I want to travel before I'm too old to enjoy it. Where will you go? Claire asked. Everywhere. Europe, Asia, South America, all the places I put off while working 60-hour weeks. Pat looked around the farmhouse with satisfaction. But I'll always come back here to check on my favorite family. You better, Claire said, hugging her. We need our Pat. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Claire and Dominic sat on their porch swing watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. I got an email today, Claire said, from Ryan. Dominic tensed slightly. What did he want? To congratulate me on the book's success, to say he was sorry for everything. That watching me rebuild made him realize what he'd thrown away. Claire leaned into Dominic's warmth. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to say to him. Good. Dominic kissed her temple. He doesn't deserve your energy. No, Claire agreed. He doesn't. You know what, though? I'm grateful for how it all worked out. If Ryan hadn't cheated, if Jessica hadn't betrayed me, if I hadn't hit rock bottom, I never would have been on that plane. Never would have been broken enough to do something unthinkable. Never would have met you and Tyler. So you're saying Ryan's infidelity was actually a good thing? Dominic teased. I'm saying every terrible thing led me exactly where I needed to be. She turned to look at him. With you. With our family. In this life we built. I love you, Dominic said. So much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. And I'm not scared anymore. Not of loss, not of the future, not of anything. Because whatever comes, we face it together. They sat in comfortable silence as stars began appearing overhead. Inside, 3 children slept safely. Outside, the world kept turning. And here, on this porch in Oregon, 2 people who'd saved each other held hands and watched the night sky. Claire's phone buzzed. Another message through her publisher, another reader whose life had been changed by the book. You're making a difference, Dominic said, reading over her shoulder. Saving people every day, just like you did on that plane. We're making a difference, Claire corrected. You showed me what it looks like to change your life, to leave everything behind for what matters. That's in the book, too. So what now? Dominic asked. What's next for us? Claire thought about it. They had 3 beautiful children, a strong marriage, a community that loved them, financial security, safety, peace. Now, well, she smiled, now we just live. We raise our kids, we grow old together, we keep helping people when we can. We stay grateful for every ordinary day. That sounds perfect. And it was. 5 years later, Claire stood at the back of a large auditorium watching parents file in for the grief counseling seminar she was about to give. Her book, now in its 15th printing, had led to speaking invitations across the country. Tyler was 9 now, playing Little League. Lily was 7, already showing signs of being an artist like her grandmother. Emma was 5 and starting kindergarten. They were happy, healthy, completely unaware of the darkness their parents had escaped. Dominic managed 3 hardware stores now, all profitable, all contributing to the local economy. He'd found his calling in helping people fix things: houses, furniture, lives. Marcus and Sarah had twin girls. Pat had traveled to 40 countries and was writing her own book about solo travel over 50. Claire's parents were deeply involved in their grandkids' lives. The rift healed completely. As for Ryan and Jessica, Claire rarely thought about them anymore. The last she'd heard, Jessica was on her 3rd marriage. Ryan was working as a paralegal since losing his law license. They'd both faded into irrelevance in her life. Claire stepped onto the stage and looked out at faces marked by grief. She recognized that look. She'd worn it herself. "My name is Claire Patterson," she began. "7 years ago, I lost my daughter to SIDS. I was broken. My marriage fell apart. My best friend betrayed me. I lost everything I thought defined me." She paused, making eye contact with people in the audience. "And then I got on a plane, and I did something unthinkable, something that would change my life forever. I helped a stranger's dying baby when I could barely help myself." She told the story, not all of it, but the parts that mattered. The grief, the courage, the healing through helping, the family she'd found, the body she'd rebuilt. "You can survive this," she told them. "The grief doesn't go away, but it becomes manageable. The loss doesn't fade, but you learn to carry it. And sometimes when you're at your lowest, when you think you'll never be whole again, that's when you're brave enough to do the unthinkable thing that saves you." After the seminar, people lined up to share their stories, to thank her, to tell her the book had saved their lives. That night, she came home to chaos. Tyler and Lily fighting over the remote, Emma finger painting at the kitchen table, Dominic cooking dinner while simultaneously helping with math homework. "How was it?" he asked, kissing her hello. "Good, really good. I think we helped some people today." "Of course you did." He handed her Emma, who immediately smeared paint on Claire's shirt. "You help people every day. It's your superpower." Claire looked around at her chaotic, messy, beautiful life, at her husband who had left an empire to run hardware stores, at her children who'd never know how close they came to not existing, at the peace they'd fought so hard to build. "You know what I realized today?" she said. "Sheba." "What?" "That plane ride 7 years ago? Best decision I ever made." Dominic smiled, the same smile that had captured her heart on a red-eye flight when both their lives were falling apart. "Mine too." They fed the kids, did the bedtime routine, collapsed onto the couch exhausted. Later, lying in bed, Claire thought about everything they'd survived: the grief, the betrayal, the danger, the fear, the running, the rebuilding. All of it led here, to this moment, to this life, to this love. She fell asleep holding Dominic's hand, grateful for every unthinkable choice that had brought them here. Grateful for the stranger's baby who'd given her a reason to live. Grateful for the dangerous man who'd shown her what love really looked like. Grateful for the family they'd built from the ruins. The past didn't own them anymore. The future didn't scare them. They were simply, beautifully, completely alive. And that was everything.